Well, morning, church. Back when I was 12, I had one of these moments. I feel like we all probably have them. Moments in our childhood where there are these sort of defining instances that shape much of who we become and how we think. Sometimes for good, and sometimes difficult moments. For me, I was 12 years old, and I was driving with my dad in the truck down the road, and my dad's a heavy smoker, and he forgot to crack the window. And as a 12-year-old kid, I'm wrestling with this need to stand up for myself, this need to go from childhood to adulthood. And I take this moment, of all moments, I decide I'm going to stand up for myself. It was the 90s, secondhand smoke was kind of a big deal. So I said, roll down your window. If you want to kill yourself, that's fine, but don't take me with you. I know, right? So what happened then was that we instantly, I didn't realize the reaction could happen that fast, instantly did a 90-degree turn into a side street. I'm pretty sure we did it on two wheels. That's how quickly we turned the truck and then pulled into a church parking lot. And my dad got out of the truck and he walked around the truck and then he opened my door up and he began to scream at me. I don't know how long, but it felt like forever. About how disrespectful I was, how ungrateful I was, and on and on and on. And I remember that moment so vividly. Because for years in my life later, anytime I felt like I had to stand up for myself, I felt like I couldn't because that was the dangerous thing to do. And anytime I got in conflict with someone, heated conflict, I actually felt like I was that 12-year-old kid sitting on the seat of that truck. And I had to process through some of that and figure it out and what that wound was. And I had to come to a lot of realizations about that. But one of the big ones, first of all, I realized that I was dumb. I was an idiot kid who was disrespectful, and I shouldn't have said what I said the way that I said it. I came to learn and understand. Yes, fully understand that. The other thing I came to learn was that my dad is a person. I know that seems shocking, but as a kid, that's a big realization, that my dad was just a person. My dad had struggles with anger, no secret there. My dad had some insecurities, I think some shame as well about smoking. My dad's dad wasn't great at communicating and teaching him sort of healthy family connections. He had a small business that was really struggling at the time. He and my mom were going through a rough patch in their marriage. Financially, we were having a really difficult go of it. So there was a lot happening in that season. And I've had to learn to have some grace from my dad because he was just a dude. And for me, it's sort of an embodiment of something we see in Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians 6, verses 1 to 4. Here's what we see Paul saying. 6:1, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. All of you parents, yes, amen to that. Worth the price of admission this morning. Now that word obey, when you translate it in the Greek, really kind of means respect, honor, value, treasure, but also obey. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. It's one of the 10 commandments. Honor your father and mother in the 10 commandments, but it also is the only one that comes with a promise. It says 4 things will go well for you. Here's the secret, right? Is that when we're kids especially, our parents, actually even Disney won't tell you this, our parents know a few things. Our parents have some wisdom to impart to us and probably know more than we do. And what tends to happen, if we listen to our parents, things tend to go generally better for us. I remember as a kid being shocked at how often my mom was right. Now, I would never tell her that, but I was usually surprised by that fact. Verse 4, fathers, that's also fathers and mothers, parents, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Do not provoke your children. Do not crush them. Do not crush their spirit. Do not come down too hard on them. Family is a blessing. But family is also very, very difficult and messy and complicated. Take heart, though. You're not the only one with an embarrassing, messy, complicated family. You're not. Actually, if you go through the Bible and just do a quick survey of families in the Bible, they're pretty messy. So you go all the way back to the very first kids. You've got Cain and Abel. One son kills the other one out of jealousy. You've got murder in the first brothers. You fast forward a little bit after that, you've got Noah after the whole flood deal. Noah gets drunk and passes out in a cave, and one of his sons comes in and makes fun of him. Kind of the modern day equivalent would be if he took a picture and then posted it on the internet or something. And Noah gets really angry at his son and disowns him and kicks him out of the house. Then you got like Jacob and Esau, who are constantly fighting, and Jacob's constantly trying to steal from his brother. You've got Joseph, who's this arrogant kid. His brothers all hate him. They sell him into slavery and fake his death. Then there's like Tamar and Judah. Now this is kind of next level. If you think your family is messed up, listen to this. So Judah's the sort of patriarch of the family, this dude, big deal. And then he's got a son named and marries this lady named Tamar. Now, dies, and according to Israelite law and responsibility socially, it was supposed to be Judah's responsibility to take one of his other sons and give him to Tamar so that Tamar could have kids and a family and could be provided for and protected down the road. But Judah didn't really like Tamar, didn't really care about her, dismissed her, just sort of forgot about her. And that went on for quite some time. And then all of a sudden, Tamar one day decides she's going to take matters into her own hands and disguises herself as a prostitute. Then she seduces her father-in-law. He gets her pregnant. He doesn't know. And then he finds out Tamar's pregnant. And he goes into a rage. And then Tamar pulls out the ring that she gave him in the heat of it all and exposes that he was the father. It's kind of a hot mess. This is in the Bible. They made the Bible. Family doesn't seem so weird anymore, right? You got Abraham and Sarah, they're barren, and then Sarah says, hey, Abraham, why don't you sleep with my servant? And then they have a baby, and then all of a sudden, there's this crazy hostility and infighting and drama. You got David, whose son Absalom steals one of his father's wives, and then tries to kill his father and steal the throne. These people are all in the Bible. Family is messy and complicated. You are in good company. You're not alone. It's okay. So what is the secret? What does the Bible have to tell us about healthy family connections? How do we establish healthy family connections around us? And it's the same secret that we saw last week with marriage. Philippians chapter 2, verse 4. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also the interest of others. Have this mind amongst yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in likeness of men and being found in human form, humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. It's the story of Jesus entering into flesh. That's Christmas we celebrate, in order to put our needs ahead of his own. And so we're to have that same attitude towards our family. Putting the needs of others ahead of our own. Children, putting the needs of your parents ahead of your own. Parents, putting the needs of your children ahead of your own. Siblings. That might be the most difficult one if we're being honest. Putting the needs of your siblings ahead of yourself. And when you do that, you foster love and you can establish joy within families. Now, what are the needs of our families? I did a bunch of sort of psychology and sociology study this week, and there are generally, distilling it all together, there are generally 6 stages to human development. This says 5. I made a typo. I apologize. There's 6. The first stage is early childhood. That is, small children, and their needs really revolve around dependence and learning whether or not they can trust the people around them. Can I trust people to meet my needs around me? And that is their primary desire, their primary need is developing that trust and that connection. The second stage is middle childhood. This is like elementary school age. And the primary needs there are about kids learning to develop friendships, about learning about the world around them and interacting with it in school, but also socialization, learning about friendships, learning about leading, learning about following, whether the world is safe or the world is a dangerous place. Learning a sense of pride in their abilities and their accomplishments, what they're able to do, what they're not able to do. These are some of the needs of middle childhood. Then we get into adolescence, which is kind of the teenage years. Now, sociologists said that adolescence used to end like around 19. They've actually seen no adolescence is stretching on now into kind of late 20s almost. But adolescence is a time where the primary need is figuring out your identity. Who am I? Who am I apart from my parents, apart from the surroundings around me? Who am I as a person? And it's discovering some of these identities and also pushing and trying to figure out where the boundaries are and why the boundaries are there. That is part of the needs of this stage and why teenage years are so difficult for both those in it and those parenting through it. And that being said, not all identities. It's normal for kids to try on different identities. And maybe I'm a this person, or maybe this is who I am. It's normal to explore those, but not every identity is healthy and needs to be celebrated. As parents, that's where you need to set boundaries and actually discipline and walk with your kids. But the difference is in middle childhood, what kids really want is authority. They want authority. They want really clear structure and boundaries. Adolescents want relationship. And so as you walk with your kids, their need is not just for you to tell them what's what, thus saith the parent, obey, but rather to engage in a relationship and that loving back and forth as a parent. That is what they need. Stage 4 is early adulthood. Early adulthood, the needs there are about developing long-term relationships. Who am I going to be for the rest of my life independent? Who are the people I'm going to surround myself with? What is my career going to be? What am I going to do with my time? It's really establishing these sort of primary sort of relationships, connections, energies. And then we work into middle adulthood. In middle adulthood, the focus there, the need is about creating something, working for something that lasts beyond our lives, a legacy, about something bigger than ourselves, working towards something greater, making sure our lives mean something. And then sixth and final stage is older adulthood, where it's a time of reflecting back on a life that was lived. And if those memories are fond, and if someone feels in this stage as the end sort of is the next stage, if they feel that it was a life lived well, then what tends to emerge is wisdom. But if it's a life full of regrets, a life full of mistakes, what can happen in later adulthood is bitterness tends to emerge. And there are needs in each of these stages. How do we put the needs of others ahead of ourselves? Part of it is looking at them individually, like we talked about last week with the 5 love languages, but also what stage are they in and what is needed for me for them in those stages. So for those of us who are children, for those of us in this room who have parents, I think that should pretty much cover all of us. I think the first thing is realizing that your parent is a person. That seems ridiculous, but if we're being honest, sometimes that's difficult to realize, that our parents are people who are struggling. They have struggles. They have challenges in whatever season they're in. If you're a child and you have parents who are in sort of young adulthood, then the struggle, they're trying to figure out relationships. They're trying to figure out how to have a healthy long-term relationship. That's a real struggle, trying to figure out their career and who they are and what they want to do and trying to plan out the rest of their lives in that. Also financially, often it's usually a struggle in early adulthood, and it's having grace for them in the stage they're at, realizing they don't have all the answers. If you have a parent who's in middle adulthood, then we need to tell you that there's this tension that we feel, that there's this real tension between the demands of what we really want to accomplish with our lives and something that's lasting as a legacy that goes beyond us, but also the tension of we just need to be around you. And we know that we need to spend time with you, and there feels like there's constant tension between those two things where we have these expectations on us and there's not enough time for us to go around everywhere. It's a struggle. And if you have a parent who's in older adulthood, it's also acknowledging that those are some real struggles as well too, some real needs. There's no other stages. They're in the last stage. The end is probably somewhere in sight. That's got to be really difficult to process through. Reflecting back on your life, maybe regretting mistakes or risks not taken, reminiscing, dealing with maybe health that's failing, and friends that are getting sick and dying off. I think it's having grace, first of all, for our parents as people and realizing the needs they're in. Now, for those of you kids in the room, I have a little secret I want to share with you. You ready? Your parents don't know what they're doing. We're making it up as we go. Honestly, we're making it up as we go. right? We love you, we want what's best for you, but there's no easy one answer. We're trying to figure it out on the fly, if we're being honest. And we're gonna make mistakes, but we love you. We need you to trust us because we're trying our best. I remember coming out of the hospital with Aubrey, and you know, our first, and she's this baby, and she doesn't stop crying. And I remember just holding her, trying everything that I could think of to try, but she's still just like screaming at me like a psychopath. I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I look at Jen like, what do we do? And she looks at me like, I don't know, what do we do? And then we start looking around for an adult, and we realize, oh, this is us. We had no idea. Even like lately, my kids will ask me for a candy, and I'll like spiral into like panic mode. Like, wait a second, what are the implications of this decision? And so if they ask me for a candy and I say yes, are they going to develop a sugar addiction? Like, are they going to have an unhealthy sort of connection with food their whole lives, and then they're going to grow up and they're not going to know how to eat healthy, and they're going to get obese, and they're going to be on a TLC show where they have to like get cut out of their house with a chainsaw? Or what if I say, no, you can't have a candy? Then are they going to, are they going to resent me? Am I going to be sort of pushing them down, and they get out of their house and they get their own freedom, and it's like all candy all the time because my dad was withholding, right? And then they become obese and have to get cut out of their house on a TLC show. So they ask me for candy, and I'm going, I don't know. We don't know. Have some grace. We're trying to figure it out on the fly. For those of us who are kids, for those of us who are parents, I think one of the things we need to remember as we try and meet the needs of others, as we try and love others, is we need to remember that our kids also are people. But our kids, especially our younger kids, are not just tiny adults. Sometimes I struggle with this, where why won't you just think through the implications of what you're about to do? Their brains aren't fully developed. In fact, our brains don't fully develop until we're like 25 years old. And there are certain processes and ways of thinking that our kids just are not able to do. Not only that, I know that we dismiss it. And yeah, sure, our like 6-year-olds, our 6-year-olds don't work 60 hours a week and, have rent that's due and have like people all around them that seem to be like narcissistic, violent narcissists, right? They don't have cars that are breaking down. They don't have backs that are aching. They don't have that stuff. But let's not forget, just remember what childhood was like. And the fact that every day you go to school and like the logo on your shoes and what you wore on your clothes every day was a huge deal. It was a huge deal. And bullies, and the stress of tests and the stress of all of it and those social dynamics, and the fact that if you show up to school with like a pimple on your face, you could undo all of the social capital you built up in like 3 months of volleyball practice. Right? And then I remember stressing the night before about like, how do I get out of class 1 minute early so I can run down the hall just as that girl gets out of class so I can like happen to like bump into her, and then maybe she'll notice me, and then maybe if she notices me, I got to figure out, well, how am I going to not embarrass myself, right? These were things that were stressful. So yes, they're not working a full-time job, but their lives as well, their experience is difficult. Let's not discount it. Let's have some grace for our kids. And remember that they're learning, and especially in the teenage years, they're pushing up against boundaries, and discipline is required, but discipline is not punitive. Discipline is not about the past event. Discipline is not about me making you pay for how you hurt me or broke things around the house. Discipline needs to be forward-facing. Discipline needs to be for the good of the child and not for the ease of the parent. Discipline is about future behavior and not past actions. See, family can be a source of tremendous joy. What happens at Christmas is usually those relationships are amplified. You have a healthy relationship, it's amplified, and Christmas makes it just amazing. And if you have strained relationships, then Christmas amplifies that strain, and it becomes messy and dramatic and difficult. And I think families can be a source of great joy. And joy, while being not just an emotion, is also not an emotion, and fights in our souls with other emotions. And I think one of the best things that we can do for our families, whether it's our kids or our parents or our siblings, one of the best things that we can do is learn the secrets of emotional regulation. Probably not what you were expecting to hear coming to church this morning. Emotional regulation. Proverbs 25:28 says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. Self-control, self-mastery over those emotions that bubble up within us. Now, I find it funny to say that because this week, midweek, one of my kids had a full-on nuclear meltdown. I'm pretty sure the fallout was felt in Elk Grove. It was huge. I remember just like being screamed at, going, how in the world am I supposed to preach on family? This is not good. And I'm like, I am such a hypocrite. So just know that I haven't perfected this. I'm walking with you, trying to figure it out as I go, okay? Emotional regulation, I believe, is one of the best things that we can do to try and love our family well. Starting off with an illustration, I had mentioned last week that we had gone on this big family vacation where we had 3 young kids. We bought this used fifth-wheel trailer. It was 30 feet long. It was just a beast. And we hauled it around the country. But what I've discovered was that buying an RV is a little bit like walking out of a hospital with a baby. Like they wave goodbye at you as you drive away, and you just think to yourself, like, I don't know if anyone knows, but I have no idea what I'm doing with this thing. Like, I am not qualified to drive away with this thing. So I'm pulling out with this RV, and what I've discovered is that parking it has caused me like this great emotional, like overwhelming something. And so like we would pull up to these RV sites around the country, and even like hours before we'd get there, I'd start to like sweat, and my heart rate would go to like 196, and I'd start to get frustrated and angry about everything. And so backing this thing in, I can't see anything. It's so big. All I see is this giant white trailer wall. I have no idea. I feel like I'm about to run over my entire family, and I'm about to get it stuck or drive it off a cliff. I can't see anything. And I start to sort of panic. And then I start to yell at the window at Jen, and I'm yelling like, you need to tell me what to do. And what I've also realized is that Jen is also a person who has never backed up a fifth-wheel trailer either. And so she just kind of like goes quiet in her panic and not figuring out what to do. And so then I'm yelling at her out the window like, ah! And then I remember like staring at my steering wheel. Just like my heart is racing. I feel like I'm about to get this whole thing stuck. And I just remember yelling at my steering wheel. Like just screaming at it, overwhelmed by whatever was going on. So, needless to say, that's what you are not supposed to do. And so I want to share with you what I've been studying as I've compiled all this together, share with you sort of what I believe is sort of the key to emotional regulation. So, it's Christmas season. I got you a gift. I made it for you. Are you ready? I made you an acronym. You're welcome. I think it might be my first acronym. The acronym that I believe that with emotional regulation is we need to ride through it. So when you feel feelings, right? The key though is with our feelings is that we feel them before we think them. That the way that processes information comes to us, it goes to our limbic brain first, and we feel things. That's why there's like the fight or flight response, why your adrenaline kicks in, is because you feel things before you think them. And so when your snot-nosed kid next to you disrespects you and tells you, you know, go die, don't take me with you, right? Your first response is to feel instead of think through. And so we need to stop and process and realize that we feel things before we think them. And so the first R in riding through our emotions is to first realize. Realize that we're feeling something. That we don't naturally just have to wear all of our emotions on our sleeves. We're not slaves to them. If we feel angry, we don't have to outburst in anger. We can go, hey, I am angry, and we can realize that we're feeling something out of the ordinary. Seems simple, but it actually helps us break. Like, hey, I'm feeling something. That's different. Let's stop and process what am I feeling. And sometimes that has to happen after the fact, forensically. Hopefully there's not too much damage that's happened in the process. But the first thing we need to do is simply realize and acknowledge that I'm a person, I have feelings, and I'm feeling something. Realize. The second is to identify. Identify what it is you're feeling. Identify and name what it is you're feeling. So for me, as I'm, screaming at the steering wheel, what I need to do is stop and realize, hey, this is not normal for me. And then identify what I'm feeling isn't anger. It's coming out as anger as I scream out the window and as I yell at the trees around me for existing. What I need to realize, though, is that what's really going on in me is panic. I'm feeling panic. Identify specifically what it is that's going on inside you. And step 3 then is determine. Determine where that's coming from, right? Is panic the correct emotion to have when you are camping? No, I'm not about to die. The correct emotion for camping is sadness, right? So where is this panic coming from? And then again, maybe you even need somebody to help you talk this through, but go deep. Determine why is it that I'm feeling this? And for me, what I've come to realize is that my panic stems from the fact that I might get stuck. And if I get stuck, then I get exposed as being someone who has the inability to do something. And then everyone around me will see that I don't have what it takes, will see that I can't do it, and I will be embarrassed. And there you have the secret to my emotional issues that stem back to childhood stuff. But it's the panic that I might get exposed as not being able to do something on my own and that I might be embarrassed. And that is the source of my panic when it comes to parking an RV. And so when you feel something, if it's road rage, instead of just ramming them off the road, hey, I'm feeling something that's not normal. What is it? I'm angry. What are you angry about? And then processing, wait, why am I angry at this person that I don't know? I cut people off all the time, probably. Right? And it's stopping and it's going, is this appropriate? Why do I feel this? What's the source of it? What's the root of it? Where's this panic? Where's this anxiety coming from? And you don't have to feel guilty about it because you're a person and we have feelings. But it's going, is this normal? Is this helpful? And then the last step to ride through our emotions is to ease into it. Kind of like popping the clutch, right? You pop a clutch too hard, everything around you just gets jerky and shakes, right? All the relationships around you, if you pop the clutch in your emotions a little too fast, everything just gets shaken up. Ease into it and figure out what is the appropriate way to respond to this so that I don't create collateral damage around me, right? Yelling at Jen out the window, probably not the most helpful solution. Instead, what I had to learn was, okay, I'm just panicked about getting stuck. And I communicated that with Jen, and then what we discovered was all she needed to do when I backed in was I just needed her to tell me, you're good, you're good, you're good, you're not gonna hit anything, you're clear. I could be way off where I wanted to be in terms of the parking spot. That's fine, I don't care, as long as I'm not going to hit anything or get stuck. And all she had to do was just continually reassure me, you're good, you're fine, we're good, we're good. Come out and take a look, I think we missed the mark, let's try again. And that eased everything. And so it's realizing with our emotions, how do we ease into those so that we don't destroy the connections around us, that we don't lash out, that realizing you get home and your kid spills a glass of milk and your first response is just to flip out and yell, like, hold on a second. Why? Right? There's even a cliche about it. Okay, I realize I'm angry. I'm identifying that, yeah, there's anger. I'm frustrated. But is it really about the milk? No, actually, there was that thing at work today, or that ongoing thing, or it's this health thing, or it's my parents. That's what's really going on, and this is just sort of triggering that. And so then it's realizing, hey, yelling at my kid about spilling milk is probably not going to help. Instead, I tell them, hey, get a cloth and clean it up. Come on. And I don't have to break that relationship for the sake of something else that's going on deeper within, and I can deal with that deeper within on my own and help talk it through later and process it. So as children and as parents, it's realizing that we don't need to be slaves to our emotions and others around us don't have to suffer when we're feeling things. You can slow down, process, think them through, and realize that most emotions have a root somewhere deeper, that I think God wants to meet you in those places and bring healing. Emotions are sometimes like pain. They just sort of, they point to something else deeper that's going on. Because our responsibility, if we want healthy connections, is to serve others around us, to put the needs of others ahead of our own. We do that by knowing who they are and what their love language might be and how to care for them, knowing what stage they're in and what's needed and how they need me to walk alongside them in that stage, giving them grace that they're a person who are struggling probably just as we are, and then taking control of our own emotions so that others don't suffer the consequences for what's going on inside. Easing, riding walking in them in order to love others around us and see healthy connections. And knowing that all of it is because Jesus entered into flesh in order to adopt us as his sons and daughters. That out of love, that he poured everything out in order to choose us, in order to adopt us, that we become part of the family of God because of the love and the service of Jesus himself. Let's pray. So God, we thank you. We thank you for the joy in this season that we have in you because of your love, because of your grace, because of the hope that we have in you, Jesus. God, help us to appreciate our families. God, they are imperfect. Family can be messy. It can be complicated. But God, help us to find joy in those connections around us. Help us to put the needs of others before ourselves. Help us to control the emotions that are going on within us and help us to figure out what they point to and what healing you need to bring in our lives. Jesus, we lift all this up in your gracious, mighty name. Amen.